Imagine a crowded street, filled with people. How do you think those people got there? By car, bus, train, or by walking? Most every street in any major city looks like this, crowded with a lot of people trying to get where they need to go. You might not think about it or even be aware, but how those people are traveling matters. How they got there matters. How they are going home matters. The different modes of transportation that people use every day have larger effects on the environment than societies care to admit. In general, U.S. transportation is dominated and held together by a web of interstate systems. They are used by everyone and for many different reasons, including occupational, recreational, and economic use over long and short distances. Originally built in the 1940s under the New Deal for military reasons, the interstate system started out as a system that easily connected cities to the suburbs and cities to other cities. When built, the interstate system not only made transportation more efficient and helped make America a global superpower, but it also effectively changed the culture of how people travel. In the year 2019, the interstate system only hinders effective transportation and harms the environment. The everyday overuse of the interstate creates traffic, which increases the time spent traveling and the amount of carbon dioxide emissions coming from the vehicles stuck in traffic. Thus, the interstate becomes a hub of carbon dioxide emissions. In order to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide emissions coming from the interstate, we have increased the public's access to zero-emission vehicles and personal cars and public transportation. This way, there are more people driving zero-emission cars and using zero-emission public transportation. Therefore, not only are there less people driving carbon-emitting vehicles, but less people are using the interstate altogether. Here is a map of the amount of states that have any clean vehicle policy or program. In the year 2019, only 10 states have implemented a zero-emission program for domestic manufacturers of smaller vehicles, requiring manufacturers to obtain a certain amount of zero-emission credit or sales. By 2029, due to federal legislation, all U.S. states have implemented not only a clean vehicle policy or program, but all of those programs are zero emission. Nowadays, all cars made in the U.S. are zero emission. This has significantly increased the public's access to zero emission cars. They are sold everywhere, and because of this, they are much more affordable. This increased access to zero-emission vehicles was also created through the establishment of more public transportation and by making all public transportation zero-emission. This included trains, buses, scooters, and all ride-sharing vehicles. This legislation has made America one of the leading countries in zero-emission vehicle sales, even when zero-emission programs and technologies were introduced globally. In 2029, most public transportation vehicles look like this: clean, efficient, and accessible. Increased access to zero-emission vehicles not only allowed for more use of zero-emission vehicles, but encouraged the public to go more green in more ways than just driving. A shift in the culture of how we travel has occurred. People will take a bus to work instead of taking their personal car, or instead one person taking a car to work, multiple people take the same car in a carpool. These actions not only improve the amount of carbon emissions coming from our smaller vehicles, but also improve accessibility to public transportation and zero-emission vehicles in both large and small cities. In the year 2029, transportation of people is dominated by public transportation, especially the Continental High-Speed Railway system. Mimicking the original transcontinental railway, the high-speed railway is cleaner, safer, and of course faster. This is a map of how the railway was created, first connecting the largest cities and then the two ends of the country together. The high-speed railway greatly reduces cross-country transportation. It cuts time of travel in quarter. What used to take 80 hours to travel from New York to San Francisco now only takes 20. Because of its efficiency, in the year 2029, the high-speed railway contributes to a large portion of how people get around, especially when traveling long distances. Most importantly, the high-speed railway greatly reduced the amount of cars in the interstates traveling long distances. People can now choose how they want to travel instead of where they are going, dictating how they get there. Thus, people now have more options and a wider variety of ways to travel, so overall there are less people using the same mode of transportation. This has made transportation more dispersed. There are the same amount of people traveling, but not all in the same way. People use a high-speed train to travel over state lines, buses inside their cities, and cars as a last resort. Interstates now look like this. There are few recreational cars, but the interstates are mostly used for the transportation of goods and trucks. This has decreased the clogging and jamming of the interstate and overall traffic. Not only are people traveling cleaner and more efficiently, but they don't travel through traffic and contribute to the tons of carbon emissions coming from the hubs on the interstate. Overall, transportation is easier and no longer harmful for the environment. We like to think that the choices we make and actions we participate in do not affect the environment. We like to think that our world, our politics, are separate from nature. But as explained before, changes in the way we live, even if they do not directly involve nature, have significant effects on the environment. The federal legislation that allowed and enforced these changes we made to our transportation systems significantly reduced the negative effects we have been inflicting on nature for decades. We've improved our relationship with nature in a way that is closer to harmonious coexistence. These improvements are extremely important in fixing our past mistakes, but more importantly, preserving the natural world. It was by no means easy, but now we are significantly closer to that destination Rachel Carson once described as one that preserves and protects the earth. Thank you.